Hey guys, coming at you with another review impressions video. This game, Ogre Battle 64. Now, I actually haven't played an N64 game in a while, and that's why I decided to play this one. The N64 is one of those systems that there's not much on it left that I really want to play, and I was thinking about doing like a top 10 or 20 list on it. And I looked through all the N64 games I could play, and this one is the only one that really appealed to me. Because I feel like a lot of N64 games age. I think that's another topic for discussion on another video. But this is one of those games that I'd always heard it was a great game, and one of my personal friends in real life, it's like one of his favorite games of all time. It was on. It seems like one of those games that it's not talked about a lot. But when people talk about N64 games and the best games on it, I hear it mentioned a few times. And I'll just say right now, like, the N64 is not known for RPGs, but from the ones that are on it, this is by far my favorite, and it's easily the best one if you're into strategy RPGs at all. Which, strategy RPGs, we haven't always seen eye to eye. I've tried a lot of them, and I just find myself never being able to finish them. I get like halfway through them, and I'll just be bored with them, or I'll be terrible at them. I'm really bad at strategy RPGs. Even Fire Emblem Awakening, which got a lot of people into that series. I had tried Fire Emblem games before, and even that game it didn't do it for me. It didn't get me into the series. I don't know if I'm gonna actually try Fire Emblem again. I know it's so sad that I just can't seem to get into Fire Emblem. But this game, Ogre Battle 64, I was able to get hooked on this game, and I stuck with it all through the end, and all until the end. And this is a 70-hour game. This took me, the playthrough that I beat it took me over 70 hours to beat, which I was not expecting. I didn't know this game was going to be this long. Like, this game is a beast of a game, so you definitely got to have some time to play it. But I don't think it's one of those RPGs where you don't necessarily have to, like, if you come back to it after a few months, I don't think you're going to be that lost. Well, maybe a bit, I guess, especially in terms of the storyline, maybe. But I was just so hooked on this that it just never got old right up until the end, which some games do that to me. Like, I get fatigued. With this game, it wasn't the case. And my first playthrough, I actually got to a point where I started over. I was playing the game wrong in a few ways, and I got to a point where it was actually too difficult for me. I'll talk about that a bit later. So I started over again. I got 17 hours into the first playthrough, then started over again, and then beat the game with like 71 hours on the clock. So yeah, a lot of content in this game, and that's one playthrough. There are 6 endings you can get in this game. The content here is insane. So anyways, I'll start with the storyline, and I'm not going to talk too much about the storyline, because frankly, I don't think it's that great. Someone might disagree with me, but it's a very kind of cliche storyline. You basically lead an army, and you lead this revolutionary army. And you kind of overthrow like this evil empire. There's like it tackles like religious themes, politics. It's a very political storyline, which has never been my cup of tea. And there's a lot of like chosen one and like powerful god and like underworld creatures, and just there's a lot of like RPG tropes in here, and I didn't find it that engaging, even up until the end. There is some character development, which I liked. There's a decent amount of character development. I don't know, it just never hooked me, the storyline. I found myself just kind of skipping through text around the halfway point and just kind of trying to... the battles are the fun part of this game to me. The storyline just really didn't keep my interest, unfortunately. But what did keep my interest was the gameplay, which I'm going to get into that now. And there's so much to cover with this game, because I'll tell you right now, this game is probably the deepest RPG I've ever played. The amount of depth here is insane. Where do I want to start? Basically, this game is it's this weird real-time strategy RPG hybrid, where you kind of go throughout these maps, liberating strongholds, and eventually making your way to the boss stronghold, where you take out a boss unit, and then you complete the level, and then you go to a world map, select the next area to go to, and you kind of progress that way. If you progress in chapters, and there's scenes, and there's little story bits that happen after and before every level. But it's not a completely linear game either. There's different levels you can go to at different points. There's dialogue options you can choose at different points, and that can affect certain things that happen in the storyline. But the alignment system is what's generally going to affect your endings and stuff, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Again, my thoughts are here. My thoughts are going to be a bit jumbled here because there's just so much to talk about. So it might seem a bit rambling here, and I apologize for that. But I guess I'll talk about how the battles kind of play out. Basically, you make your army consists of units, right? And each unit has a certain amount of characters in it, and one of your characters will be a leader. Now, there's multiple characters to choose from to populate your units with. You have the human characters. You can have beasts in the game. There's dragons. There's golems, and a lot of these monster characters can be found on the maps. Like, you can revisit maps that you've cleared, and you can find them in the wild, in random locations on the map. Just suddenly a monster will appear, and it's kind of like Pokemon in that aspect, where you kind of have to negotiate with them. Actually, really SMT, I should say. You kind of negotiate with them, and they can join your battalion, or they might fly away or run away or stuff like that. Which that's actually a pretty fun part of the game. I have some problems with that. I'll talk about that right now, I guess. It seems a bit random to me, and if you've been looking for a certain unit for a long time, like in the beginning of the game, my friend was telling me how Hellhounds are awesome. Get a Hellhound. And I was looking for one for ages, and when I finally did find one, Hellhound ran away, and it really pissed me off. Like, it really takes a long time sometimes to get the unit you want, and it'll tell you which kind of enemies you can find on certain maps. But it doesn't tell you the right locations for them. Like, there might be like barrens or highlands, which are the mountains, or like marshlands, and you have to keep roaming around those areas to find them. And it's a lot of just like choosing your character and moving them from one spot. When he hits that spot, move him to another spot. It's kind of tedious. It's like a minor complaint I have with this game. There's like, overall, Ogre Battle 64 is one of those games where there's a bunch of minor complaints, but nothing really bothers me too much. To the point where I would just consider it a fantastic game with such minor flaws. But yeah, so you have your units, which consist of around different amounts of characters. If you're going with a all-human unit, you can have 5 characters. Beasts take up like 2 slots, so you can generally only have 1 or 2 beasts in a unit. And with those kind of units, you want like a Beast Master as your human unit, because that powers up the beast's attacks. But with the human characters in this game, they can raise their class. They can be promoted into higher classes. So you can have a fighter, and he can eventually turn into a knight. If his stats are at a certain... Like, if he has certain stats, like if his strength is high enough, if you have the right basic equipment, you got to have certain equipment to have that character level up. And their alignment has to be at a certain point. There's the alignment system. I'll talk about that now, I guess. Where there's a law and chaos, where this is I'll say right now, this is the one thing about this game, and I think it's kind of a staple of the Ogre series, where depending on what kind of enemies you kill with your units, their alignment will go up, or up or down. Down is chaos, up is law. And if a character, say, like, for a paladin, right, which is one of my favorite classes in the game, if you want a paladin, you got to have a knight that has a really high alignment, or else you're not going to be able to get a paladin. Likewise, if you want a wizard to be an archmage, you got to have them at a chaos alignment. And it's one of those things where the alignment system is kind of random, because it really depends on the enemies you fight. And if you have certain units with all chaos characters in it, you'll generally raise your chaos alignment up more. A lot of this is in the tutorials in the game, but it doesn't tell you directly about the alignment system. You really have to go through the menus to figure out this game. Ogre Battle 64 doesn't tell you a whole lot. You kind of got to figure things out for yourself, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of got to a point where I was actually playing the game wrong. I'll go over that at some point too. But this alignment system, I don't know, I kind of wish you could promote your characters in other ways. I kind of wish like they didn't have to be at a certain alignment to promote, because the Archmage is an amazing class too, right? And I had a couple wizards that I needed to be Archmages, but I didn't want to go through the process of just fighting enemies. Like, you know, you have to go to a certain map and fight skeletons over and over again and whatnot to lower your alignment. So there's items in the game too that will do that, and I had to resort to this kind of duping glitch. You can kind of dupe items, which admittedly, yeah, I'll admit that's cheating a bit, and you can use it to like get level up items, which I did not do, but I did use it to kind of, you know, get my wizards to be able to be archmages, and my sorceresses to be sirens, which sirens are another crazy class. Magic users in this game overall I felt were very overpowered. But I did have to use that because the alignment system just really bothered me, and I didn't want to go through the tedium of getting them down to chaos. And my wizards were at full lawful alignment, so the amount of time and effort it would have taken to get them to chaos would have been just... I don't know. The alignment system is a bit off to me. It's cool how it affects the endings. I unfortunately got the worst ending you can get. It's very easy to get it. The other endings are actually quite hard to get. Yeah, I don't know. The alignment system, it's just not my cup of tea. I can see a lot of people really digging it because it adds a lot of depth to the game for sure. I just kind of wish you promoted classes in a different way. But yeah, that's the alignment system. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with promoted classes, and there's so many classes in this game. And the fun of this game comes from experimentation. This game just rewards experimentation. Removing certain characters from units and adding others, equipping them. Each unit can be equipped with weapons and armor, and they raise stats, lower stats. Even beast units can be promoted, or when they level up, and just how different units combo with each other. There's formations in this game. It's like each formation, each unit has its kind of a grid pattern, right? You can put them on different spots on this grid, and depending on if they're in the back row or the front row, their attacks can change. So there's just another element of depth to this game and strategy. If you run into enemies on the battle map, if you're facing a certain direction, your formation will change. So you got to take that into account. It's just, there's so many different items you can use too. You can have units carry items and then use them mid-battle, which if I have to give a tip, there's 2 tips I'm going to give for this game. The first, make sure you equip items to all your units and have items maxed out, your healing items and whatnot. I didn't do this on my first playthrough because I didn't know you could even do this. And that made it so that by the time I got to a certain point in the game, which my footage, the footage I'll include in this video up there, shows my first playthrough, where I had shitty units. They weren't leveled up that well. I didn't have any items either, so I couldn't heal if I needed healing. And later in the game, you're gonna need items. You're gonna need them, because you'll never know when you'll have to revive certain characters, or if you get petrified. Damn cockatrices in this game. The cockatrice unit, they petrify you, and I've had times where like half my unit gets petrified, and there's items that cure that. You're gonna need those, but there's multiple ways to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of depth and experimentation with what characters you want in your units, how many units you want. You can form as many, well, I don't think as many as you want, but you can form a lot of them. And this is the other tip I'm going to give. If you're first playing this game, I'd say concentrate on 4 to 6 units, no more than 6. That was my problem with the first playthrough. I had 8 units, and because I had 8 units right from pretty much the beginning of the game, the levels were random between them. I'd have some units that were really powerful, and then the rest of my units were like super weak, and they'd just be slaughtered by the enemy units. So if you just concentrate on 4 to 6 of them, they'll level up. They'll get to the point where they're like a few levels higher than the enemies. And you might say that makes the game easy, but I thought the game, even playing it like that, the game had a nice difficulty curve. Towards the end, it definitely got pretty difficult. But that way, it doesn't get so overwhelming. Obviously, you can probably beat this game with a shit ton of units, but I think it's more fun, and it's less overwhelming if you concentrate on a 4 to 6. And as soon as I started over and concentrated on just 4 units, I plowed through the first half of the game really easily, and I just had a lot more fun with it that way. because yeah, this game can get pretty overwhelming if you're concentrating on so many units, and there's a lot of menu interaction type stuff. Even with 4 units, I was constantly changing them around, trying out different characters to see if they were good or not, which that's again a major component of the game, and why I found it so fun was, you know, experimentation and discovery. You know, checking out, like, for instance, the Pumpkinhead unit. When I first found him in battle, I was just like, holy fuck, that's insane, I want one of those. And then finally getting one was so rewarding, and then popping him into one of my units and seeing him in action. It's really fun. I also like how if you equip weapons on your units, it changes, you know, it will show you the different weapons. It won't show your armor, unfortunately, but all the units look really cool. The character sprites are really detailed and really awesome. But yeah, let's go back to the battles themselves, which actually I'll talk about organizing your units. Before each battle, you can organize your units, equip items and equipment onto them, and stuff like that. You can't do that mid-battle. You can't equip items mid-battle, but you can change characters and leaders mid-battle if you're at certain enemy strongholds that you've captured. But yeah, but you basically... Another thing you can do on the world map, I should mention all the things you can do on the world map. You can train. So if you need to grind, you can pay money to do training where your units will go into battle with random enemies and you'll level up. Now it costs more and more and more eventually, and I did this a lot at first. I don't know if it really helped, because I don't know, I felt the game was not too crazy difficult even up until the end. And by the end I had so much money that I don't know, I didn't feel the need to train when I much would rather spend that money on better equipment at the shops. But if you ever need to grind, that option's there. Obviously you need some money, but you'll have a lot of money in this game. Money won't be a problem, other than like the very beginning of the game. The very beginning of the game, money's a bit tight. But the battles themselves, let's talk about the battles. This, like I said before, it's kind of like a real-time strategy RPG hybrid. It's really unique, and I've not seen anything like it other than the original Ogre Battle on the Super Nintendo. Now, basically, you start off at like your main base, and you've got different kind of enemy strongholds scattered on the map, and then the main enemy stronghold, which is your ultimate objective. And you have to liberate these strongholds, and they'll have enemies on them. They'll have enemies on the map. Later in the game, they'll start rushing you from certain locations, but early in the game, generally the enemies won't rush you or anything, so you can take your time and try to get used to all the systems. And you dispatch your units from your main base, and you kind of move them along the map, liberating the strongholds, and eventually getting to that main base. Now, when you run into enemies, a battle screen will pop up where it looks like it'll be like a turn-based battle, but it's not. It's an automated battle. So, you know, your unit, all your characters on your unit will attack, the enemies will attack, and then either you'll win or lose depending on how much damage you did to the enemy unit. If they did more damage than you, you'll lose. If you did more damage to them, you'll win. Now, win-lose doesn't mean, obviously a major loss is if your unit, all your characters are wiped out, then your unit's gone, right? But if you win, the enemy gets knocked back on the battle map. So... and then they'll start coming after you again unless you kill their leader, which is another tip I'll have to give. There's tactics you can give, like, and you can do this mid-battle. You can pause the battle at any time to either retreat or set your tactics to attack the leader, attack the strongest unit or character, or attack the weakest character, or just have it on auto. Another tip, pretty much always have it on attack leader. Because what will happen if you kill their leader, especially in the first battle you run into them on, the enemy unit will just kind of run around and it basically won't attack you. Without the leader, they're not going to go after you again. So then you can kind of pick them off that way, and you won't have them chasing you on the map. So I think that's a really good tip. Actually, go after the leaders, but they'll get knocked back if you win, right? If you lose, you'll get knocked back, which can be a problem, because basically in this game you lose by if you have all your guys wiped out, or your main character is wiped out, so you got to pay attention to that too. I wouldn't like send your character out constantly and just have him constantly go out. I'd have all your other units go out before him. But if your main stronghold is captured, which, say you have your one unit on your main stronghold, and an enemy attacks your unit and you lose, your unit will be knocked back. The enemy unit will walk a bit more, land on your stronghold and capture it, and then you'll lose the battle. So that adds another element of strategy, and especially if you knock out their leaders, they'll just wander around aimlessly. They can tend to run away a lot, especially when you do kill their leader, but you'll generally be able to catch up to them unless you have you're up against an air unit, like because they can fly over mountains. The terrain, obviously, you got to take the terrain into account. You'll move slower on like highlands, whereas you'll move faster on plains. Your flying units will be able to go over the highlands really fast. Each battle goes by in days. You'll have like a time counter on the top right of the screen. So there's that too. And there's some missions that will be on a time limit, I've noticed. And basically your characters, when you move your characters, they move kind of slow. And this is probably will be the biggest turnoff for people when they first start playing. They'll notice that, wow, it takes forever for my characters to reach a certain point. I definitely recommend upping the game speed in the options menu. Also, I originally turned off the battle animations, but after turning them on, I noticed this is one of those games where you want the battle animations off. They really look nice, and they don't slow down the game all that much. So movement speed seems slow at first, even with it on the fullest speed, but eventually you get used to it. And it's not a problem eventually. But it was one of those things at first where I was like, it takes a while for my units to get from one side of the map to the other. But basically, you want to, if you kill a unit too, you'll get items. You can find items hidden on the map. You can use items to find items hidden on the map. Like I said before, you can find random encounters where you can run into an enemy unit you can persuade to join you. So that's basically how the battle system works. So it's kind of neat, but for those that want a bit more of an action-based approach, like for instance, they want to be able to attack in battle, they might be disappointed that it is kind of like an automated thing. But I don't know, I found it very enjoyable, and despite that, the amount of depth here was really, like, the amount of depth is crazy, I found. And the battles are really fun. That's the most important thing. They're just really fun to play. They do run a bit long, I must admit. These battles are upwards like 30 minutes max. You can suspend mid-battle, so if you need to go out somewhere or whatever, you have to stop playing, you can just suspend your battle and you can resume it from where you were. The problem is, there's been times where I'll like fail, or I'll get to a point where it's like I lose a unit I didn't want to lose, or some of my units get petrified, or something went wrong. And I feel like I need to restart, but I played so much of it that I don't feel like it, or I get to a point where, like, I've had like a stupid mistake I made. Right, you generally want to keep one of your units around your main base. I had a battle where I sent all my units to go after the enemy base, and by the time I got there, I was just about to win the battle, and then out of nowhere, a flying unit got to my base and captured it, and I lost like an hour, I think, down the tubes. Which, that definitely does suck. It's not a game that completely respects your time, unfortunately, especially when you consider just how long this fucking thing is, but that can be a bit frustrating, I'll admit. Now, there is no permadeath in this game, which is good. I like that. When your characters die, they're not going to be gone for good, but you gotta get to a witch's den, which are, there's one in each map where they can resurrect your characters for a cost, and this is in mid-battle, this isn't outside of battle. Now, the thing is, though, you gotta be careful here, because sometimes when your characters die, you might have a character die, and then you go and complete the map, and you don't resurrect them at the witch's den. So you can clear the map, and you're like, oh yeah, I cleared it, and then it will say, this unit turned into a zombie. Which can happen. If some of your characters die, they can turn into a zombie, which is essentially a useless unit, which is basically permadeath, if you will, and it can happen randomly. So that's why I suggest going for those witches' dens or using a resurrection item. You definitely want to make sure not too many of your units die in a battle. So you definitely got to be cautious in this game. It's not a game you can really rush. Definitely got to take your time. But yeah, that's kind of, there's no permadeath, so you can resurrect your characters when you die generally, and that's on the map. You can find shops on the map too to find weapons and armor. You can find strongholds that you can enter where you can talk to NPCs, and that gives you a bit of backstory And there's some world building there too. Unfortunately, I didn't find any of it really that interesting, which I know a lot of people will probably disagree with me. It just wasn't my cup of tea, I guess, the storyline itself. Um, but yeah, I think that about does it for the battles. Um, but yeah, I think that might be it. I think I've kind of covered everything, and you can kind of get a gauge of how this gameplay is by looking at the gameplay footage I've included here. But I'm sure I'm missing a lot because this game, there's just so much to it. And admittedly, yeah, it can be overwhelming. But once you get used to the systems and how everything works, it's just such a rewarding and fun experience. Like, I was surprised I enjoyed this as much as I did, considering strategy RPGs generally haven't been my thing. I did try the Super Nintendo Ogre Battle before this briefly, and I don't know, I gave up on it pretty quickly. I don't know what it was. I found the enemies in that game just really rushed you like mad. And the tarot card system I didn't care for, but yeah, that about does it for the gameplay. Really, really fantastic. And the alignment system is probably the only thing that personally I didn't like too much. But it's generally it's not terrible. It doesn't ruin the game or anything. Visually, I think this is a great looking game for an N64 game. A lot of N64 games age quite poorly, I think. But this game looks really good, especially the character sprites and some of the backgrounds. The 3D maps, the maps themselves don't look too great. They're the polygons, they just don't look that good, I'll be honest. But there are a lot of good-looking sprites and backgrounds in here, and the art style in general I really like. It's a really nice-looking art style. I love the character portraits, the text, or the text boxes, I should say. The menus are really easy to navigate. It's just, and they're really fluid too and smooth. The game runs really smoothly. It's a really good looking game, I think. I think it actually holds up a lot better than a lot of other N64 games. Music, it's really good too. I really like the music here. It's not, it's not one of those top tier soundtracks. I mean, a lot of the soundtracks on the PS1 RPGs I thought are better, but there's a lot of good songs here. And there's no voice acting, obviously, but yeah, I really like the music too. It's not going to blow you away, but it's definitely a great soundtrack. But yeah, I think that about covers it. I think I've talked about everything about this game, and I see this video is getting kind of long here, which I'm sorry. There's just so much to cover with this game. I gotta say, go out and play this game. I know the N64 is one of those systems not a lot of people like, not a lot of people go back to, but I'd highly recommend it. Now, in terms of the pricing of this game, now you can go for an N64 copy, but honestly, I don't think I'd recommend that for a couple of reasons. For one, cartridge only, it's not too expensive. It's about $30 to $40. If you're going complete, it's about $100, which it's not that bad, especially considering the amount of content you get here. But it's still a bit on the steep side. But the N64 controller, I just feel it wouldn't be that great for this game. I feel like it might be kind of awkward. I played this game on an emulator, but I do own this game on the Virtual Console. I don't know why I didn't play that version. It's just easier to record footage on the PC. But the Virtual Console version, I have to recommend. Only $10. So you get it for your Wii U or your Wii, and I really, really recommend it. Even people that aren't super into strategy RPGs like myself, I think you could really get into this one. Obviously, it's a time-intensive game, and with all the new releases coming out, it's something I'd maybe recommend later down the line. But on the Virtual Console, $10, that is just an unbeatable price for the amount of content you get here. And it's just a forgotten classic, I think. And I think right now it's by far the best strategy RPG I've played. And it's really made me excited to go and play Tactics Ogre. I can't wait to dive into that one because that's like a tactics RPG, like a grid-based game similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, which I think I would enjoy far more than this. Which honestly, a real-time strategy RPG type game, I really wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did, and it's like a top 20 RPGs contender for sure. Anyways, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.